Welcome to Public Speaking with Peter George. Do you want to be calm, confident, and credible every time you speak in public? Then stay tuned as Peter and his guests discuss public speaking tips, techniques, and tactics that help you increase your impact, influence, and income. Here's your host, Peter George.
Are you just starting out on your speaking career? Are you a veteran speaker who struggles to make the money you want to make? Are you reluctant to run your speaking career as a business? If you said yes to any of these, then my guest, Jane Atkinson, has a lot in store for you. Known as the Speaker Launcher, Jane is the author of The Wealthy Speaker 3.0, the founder of the Wealthy Speaker School, and the host of the Wealthy Speaker podcast. See a common thread here? She packs 30 years of contacts, connections, and experience into developing speakers from newcomer to sought-after pro. And quite frankly, many people in the industry consider Jane to be, without a doubt, the best in the business. Here's my conversation with Jane Atkinson. Hi, Jane. Welcome to the show.
Oh, I am so thrilled to be here, Peter. Thank you so much for having me.
Jane, you've been in the speaking business for about 30 years now. Why don't you fill us in on your journey?
It's been a long time. The first half of my career in speaking was as an agent for speakers. I sold speakers on the front line. I also worked 6 years under the roof of a speakers bureau. So I managed some celebrities and best-selling authors. And then about 20 years ago, I shifted into having my own coaching practice, which has since evolved into the Wealthy Speaker School. We have masterminds, we have private coaching, and I've actually got 6 books under my belt for the speaking industry.
Including a bestseller, right?
One bestseller, that's The Wealthy Speaker, which is actually this year being rewritten. And it will now be the Wealthy Speaker 3.0. So it's a total rewrite. I'm really excited to go back to the well. And it's interesting to see what I wrote, 15 years ago compared to how I feel today.
Has it been that long, 15 years?
I think so. 15 years for the first book. I think even before that, though, that I started my coaching practice.
It's a great book. I suggest it to anybody who's getting in the speaking industry or even already in it.
Thank you. And 2.0 is still really helpful, but 3.0 is going to be a doozy.
You're familiar with Bob Berg, I'm sure.
Oh, yes. Good friend of mine.
Bob was my very first guest on this show
a
few years back. And Bob mentioned your name and said the same thing. If you're a speaker, you got to learn about Jane, her books. So it's great to finally have you on here.
Well, thank you for having me. Most appreciated.
Jane, in your years of working with speakers, have you found a commonality in regards to what they're trying to accomplish?
Well, I think everybody has a different business model, right? A lot of people will say, okay, my goal is to have this much keynoting and this much training and to write some products and write some books and things like that. I think the common denominator is that people really want to create what we call it the wealthy speaker lifestyle, really being able to have the freedom to dictate your time. It's ideal when they get to the point where they can cherry pick the speaking engagements that are perfect for them. And so we've had many people get to that level where, number one, they're earning a lot of money, some very healthy 6 figures and some multiple 7-figure businesses.
Wow.
So that's a beautiful thing. But some people aren't really all about, let me drive and get to 7 figures. Some people just want to have an impact on the world and create a lifestyle that's perfect for them and their families. And when we change families' lives, that's when it gets my team and I really, really giddy.
That's a great feeling, isn't it?
It really is. Changing life. You're doing this podcast and writing a book and you're helping to change lives. And when I see the trickle-down effect on a family, that's when it gets super, super cool.
I've always felt that if you can help people in their business side, you don't know what that's going to do to their personal life.
Yeah.
Whether that's just having financial security or going to buy a boat that they've always wanted or the vacation home in Maine, whatever it might be. And I have a lot of young clients, and I think I'll never see the peak of their business careers. I just won't live long enough to see that. But I know I've had an impact on it, and I can't think of a better feeling than that.
That's wonderful. And we have clients who they'll choose, if they have 3 or 4 children, they'll take each one of them on one of their speaking trips per year. And so those moments are really special. Or in one situation, the whole family decided they were going to buy their first vacation property. They got up there. It's this beautiful log cabin close to the Canadian border, I might add. They're from Minnesota. And they loved it so much, they decided to all move there as a family. So this is someone who I've watched. This is Jen, who actually leads my team. She had little kids when we first got started. And now some of her kids are in college and they're buying vacation properties. I mean, it's really been an incredible evolution.
I mentioned financial security. A lot of speakers have trouble finding that financial security. And you're an expert in helping people get paid. How do you do that? How do you help them make sure they actually have decent income?
Well, we provide them with a formula that we know works. Some people kind of like stitch together a strategy. And my coach gave me this analogy. Stitching together a strategy would be like if you wanted to make a batch of chocolate chip cookies and you'd go out on the internet, you'd find one recipe and you'd follow it beginning to end, right? Whereas in my industry, a lot of people will stitch together a strategy. They'll listen to a podcast and take a tip from there. They'll watch a YouTube video and they'll take some ideas from there. They'll take a webinar. And so they're like stitching together a strategy. They're not really following one recipe. And so we have a recipe called Ready, Aim, Fire that really gets people across the finish line. And one of the things that I know you're interested as well as I am is that in order for this Ready, Aim, Fire to work, they need to have a particular mindset that really will get them there. You can take all the actions that you want, but if you have a thought or a belief that is somehow counterproductive when it comes to earning and making a lot of money, then it won't matter how many actions that you take. It will be very difficult for you to get the results that you want.
How often do you see that where speakers have a mindset that's not letting them accomplish what they want?
Well, we've watched people, and I say it, Peter, it's kind of like flipping a switch. And I've actually seen it in my own business too. Let's give you the example of the beginning of COVID. I took a look at what was happening and I thought, oh my goodness, my industry has been wiped out. I get call after call from clients. My calendar's gone. And people were responding how they would naturally respond. Well, my default wasn't to start like all strong and yeah, here we go. We're up for this fight. My default was fear. And I told my husband we're going to have to sell this house and get out from some of our other properties that we own. And we're going to need to do all these things because I went way over on the fear side for about 4 days. And then on day 4, I remembered, hey, wait a second. I don't make decisions based on fear. So I had a thought, and my thought was, my industry's been wiped out. Well, I happened to be going through this kind of mindset coaching, and Brooke Castillo, who runs it, she challenged us to set an impossible goal. So this is way back in March 2020. And I'm like, okay, I'll set an impossible goal. She said, let's do short term, 2 months. And so I set this goal to make $50,000 in 2 months, thinking to myself, this is crazy, this is impossible, my industry's been wiped out, never going to happen. But I changed my thought from my industry's been wiped out to people need me now more than ever.
That's great.
In the mindset, it was like flipping a light switch. When I remembered, hey, wait a second, I have a lot of value. People need me now more than ever. when I truly embraced that thought and that idea, everything changed. Not only did I make my goal, but I actually made it a month early. I only needed four weeks to get it. And I've upped my fees in the middle of COVID. I reminded myself after those 4 days of grieving that I don't actually make my decisions based on fear. And that's how we try to help people inside our school as well. And it's amazing to see them change. And then all of a sudden they're getting booked like crazy. And it's just something that's going on inside them that has them believing 100% in themselves.
Why do you think some speakers, whether it's $3,000, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $25,000, why do you think some speakers say, I'm not worth that? No one will ever pay me that much to share what I have to share.
If you have that thought, I'm not worth that, or if there's a lack of worthiness somehow brewing inside of you, you've got to get to work on the mindset around that. It's going to drive everything in your business. And so imagine that thought of I'm not worth that much, or people are never going to pay me that much, coming with you into a conversation with a prospective client. Of course, you're not going to say that out loud, but they can feel it. And your confidence will not shine through as a result of that. So that's the type of thought that we really have to work on and ensure that you get confident about what it is that I think confidence drives everything. And so what we give people first is clarity in what it is that they're selling, because when you have that clarity and you know the value that you're bringing to the table and you know who your ideal audience is, then clarity equals confidence.
Where I don't do what you do, I don't help people get gigs, but I do try to work on their confidence when it comes to that. And I keep saying, if you just keep looking at yourself as someone who's going up to speak for 30 minutes or 45 or 60 minutes, whatever it might be, and why would they pay me that much to go stand there and talk, as opposed to being a solution? People will pay for solutions.
People will pay for solutions 100%. And think about it, the amount that they're paying isn't for the 60 minutes or however long you're speaking. It's for the 20 years or 30 years of information that went into that, for all of the things that you've done to build your expertise and your knowledge. And I think that once people understand that, oh, okay, yeah, I am helping solve a problem, this is incredibly valuable to them.
Yeah, it's like you don't pay a doctor for the hour that you're there. You pay the doctor for the 20 years of experience she has.
And to keep you healthy.
Yes.
You're paying for health.
To know what to do when something's not going right.
Yeah.
Speaking about things not going right, how do you suggest when a speaker hits a stone wall? They're either not getting new gigs or aren't getting paid what they've gotten in the past or asking for now. How do they cope with that?
Well, there's two things at play. Number one is we've got to address the mindset piece of it, because there could be something there. But the second part is the activity, the action. So I like to say that there are only two things that people need for success in the speaking industry. Number one is 100% kind of like belief and commitment in themselves and what they're offering. And then number two is consistent action. So if they're taking consistent action and they're doing kind of all of the right things, then it's just a matter of time. And I know it can be difficult to just like keep out there planting seeds, but it is a numbers game. And it is indeed just a matter of time until they hit the harvest. And so I would say check in on the mindset and check in that the consistent actions are getting them what it is that they need. Maybe there's an outbound email that needs tweaking. Maybe there's a website that's confusing. We would go back to the marketing and double check on a few things, but planting seeds consistently is really the key. And so pick a number. Is it 20 emails a week or 20 calls a week, or you're going to go out to several networking events each month? Like, figure out what your marketing superpower is and then pick a number of how many times you're going to do that each month so that you can be out there consistently planting seeds.
In your answer, you mentioned 20 emails, 20 calls. Do you think aspiring speakers rely too much on email? Just doing email blasts and hoping they'll get responses?
I don't know if that's the wrong thing to do, but what I do know is that one thing we haven't really talked about yet is that there's no better form of marketing than a really great presentation. And so if you are an aspiring speaker, there's this old saying, if you want to speak, get out and speak. And so you may get out and speak strategically, do some freebies in your hometown for the types of groups that you want to ultimately be in front of. And those should then start to lead you to seeing some business. So I think working and spending time and energy and money on getting the presentation really good is also a good use of time, as well as the email marketing, as well as social media, as well as popping on the phone every once in a while and getting out and networking. I think they're all good.
What do you say to people who say, no, I just want to speak and I really don't want to run a business?
The speaking business is a business. And so if you want to be a part of it, then you'll need to be an entrepreneur. It doesn't mean that you can't find people along the way to help you. But what we often say is that you want to try to learn the business and understand the business yourself first before you start hiring so that you can train people on the system that you've developed for getting business. When people say, I'm going to just hire somebody else to do it for me, I think it's a good idea. But if they don't know how to do it themselves, then it may not work. There's this saying that you fix the system and then hire to help implement the solution rather than trying to hire to solve a problem. When you hire to solve a problem, you're putting a lot of pressure on somebody to figure out how to sell you when you don't know how to do it yourself.
And that's what a lot of people want to do is, I don't want to do this, or I don't know how to do it. I'll just hire someone who does.
And it's really hard hire is all I'll say. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's a really hard hire and you're putting a lot of pressure on someone to solve your problems for you. And if you're going to own a business, you should probably be engaged in your business.
Jane, if you could say here's one thing for an aspiring speaker to understand or go out and do, what would that be?
Well, how about picking a lane? Because I think trying to be all things to all people can be exhausting. And most of the people that I've interviewed on my podcast ask maybe what's a mistake that you wish you would have solved earlier or something that you wish you would have known earlier. And it's often, I wish I would have picked a lane sooner. So when we're talking about a lane, we're really talking about a topic, not audience, just really being known for solving that one problem. And today, I think the more narrow of an expert you are, you have to do it fearlessly. But the more narrow you are in your lane, I think the more easily people will go, that's our person. They only speak and write about solving this one particular problem. And I think that's how people can then, ding, 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 identify you as being their person. I think if you speak on a whole bunch of different things, even if they kind of gel together in some way, I just think it's really helpful to pick a lane and go narrow in it.
I was speaking to a client recently where she said, should I speak on this? I was asked to speak on it and I don't know. And I said, well, right there, that's a red flag if you're hesitating. And she said, but I know enough about it.
I have a saying for that. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. And I have a lot of clients who are starting to move away. Usually the things that you can do aren't necessarily the things that are going to pay you the most anyway. And so just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it is something to keep in mind.
I love that. Jane, it's been a pleasure to speak with you today and having you join us. Where can our listeners learn more about you, your course, and your book?
Thank you. Well, come on over to speakerlauncher.com, and we have a lot going on over there. There's a free podcast, The Wealthy Speaker Show. There's a blog. There is all kinds of great tips that people can get for free, as well as our school and books and all kinds of goodies.
I listen to your podcast every week. I've read your book. I find you immensely helpful. I've been doing this for a long time, and I still learn nuggets and ideas. And I say, ooh, I've got to do that. So thank you for all that you do for speakers and aspiring speakers. And enjoy the summer as it comes along up in Canada.
Thank you, Peter. And congratulations on your upcoming book and your show. Absolute pleasure to be here.
That's a wrap of another episode of Public Speaking with Peter George. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Tune in Monday when you'll hear another episode of Public Speaking with Peter George, and again Thursday for your next episode of Quick Bites, public speaking tips and techniques you can digest in 5 minutes or less. Until next time, remember, when it comes to speaking in public, you've got this.